So welcome to our reading of Itzel and the Ocelot. We have our author, Rachel Katstaller, with us. And just a little bit about Rachel. Rachel's originally from a tiny tropical El Salvador, where she studied strategic design. And after a period in New York, where she attended the summer residency in illustration at the School of Visual Arts, Rachel relocated to Innsbruck, Austria, together with her cat Hemingway, and that's where she is today. She's coming to us from Austria. So Rachel works for several international publishing houses, concentrating on children's books, editorial illustration, and creating insightful and honest illustrations for brands. She also leads a weekly architecture and storytelling workshop for children. And she says that Hemingway still remains skeptical about the cold weather and the lack of palm trees to climb. And I don't blame him. She just told us that it's snowy there.
Mm-hmm.
So
Thank
welcome,
you,
Rachel.
Gail.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here with you tonight. And I hope that you enjoy our event tonight.
Oh, we definitely will. So you just let me know when you need me to turn the page.
Okay, so that's the cover for Itzel and the Ocelot. Yeah, I think we can begin with the reading.
All right.
Thank you. So many years ago, although it might have been yesterday, a little girl named Itzel lived with her Nana at the edge of the jungle. Itzel loved nothing more than to listen to her Nana's stories and to play the flute her grandfather had made for her. The year of our story, a long dry spell had plagued the country, and not one drop of rain had fallen from the sky. Itzel and her Nana needed rain to water the seeds they had planted together. Their store of corn, beans, and squash was running low. Her Nana would soon have nothing to sell at the market, and worse, they would have nothing to eat. At night, as the fresh breeze cooled them, Itzel swung in the hammock and her Nana told her favorite story. When the earth was newly born, her Nana began, the lords of the hills would awaken the giant snake from its deep sleep. First with a whisper, and then with a deep thunderous cry, the giant snake would bring the arrival of the rainy season. Nana, why have I never seen the giant snake? Itzel asked. Oh, many do not believe in it anymore. So it has returned to the place where the water is born, answered her Nana. Oh, goodness. How long will we have to wait for this rain? Her Nana sighed impatiently. Itzel offered her a sip of atoll. No, my child, you eat. I'm already full, she said, even though Itzel could hear her Nana's stomach grumble. If only Itzel could do something. Could she find and awaken the giant snake herself? That night, as her Nana slept deeply, Itzel took her flute and left home in search of the river and the mysterious giant snake. The full moon cast deep shadows, teeming with threatening shapes. Itself hurried away through the trees, but then, all at once, she lost her footing and plunged down, tumbling and tumbling, deep into the jungle. Large glittering eyes and shiny sharp teeth glimmered in the darkness. Please don't hurt me, Itzel screamed. I'm just looking for the giant snake. After several heartbeats, Itzel opened her eyes, and Ocelot was staring right at her. You know about the giant snake? He asked. You can speak? Itzel was amazed. Well, all animals can speak, but you humans never listen, he said. Why are you looking for the giant snake? I needed to bring us water for our crops. Oh, I'm thirsty myself, I guess. I could help. The ocelot gestured for Itzel to follow him deeper into the jungle. Crack, crunch, creak. From afar, Itzel saw an opossum trying to shape a comal. The clay was too dry, and the comal kept breaking in half. Why don't you come with us to search for a giant snake? Itzel asked. The giant snake doesn't exist, the opossum started. But it wouldn't hurt to look just to make sure. The three marched on. Next, Itzel saw a toothy creature crying next to a spindly tree. Concerned, she asked, do you also need the giant snake to bring back the rain? The giant snake, Diaguti scoffed. I'm going to find it at the river, Itzel said. Diaguti wiped the tears from her eyes. I need water for my tree to grow enough guacales to sell at the market. So if you're going to find the water, I might as well join you. On they walked, winding through deep shadows and moonlight streaming in through the boughs. Suddenly, Itzel stopped. She had run into a funny creature hanging down by her tail. Are you all right? Itzel asked. Yes, the Kinkajou said, but my children aren't. They're waiting for me to bring water, and there is none to be found. Would you like to come back look for the giant snake with us? Itzel offered. Well, we can at least try, the Kinkajou said, looking unsure but following along. More animals joined Itzel in her search for a giant snake, even though they didn't believe they would find it. All needed water. Itzel pressed on, determined to prove the giant snake's existence. Something was shining beyond the trees. Was this the place where the water is born? Had Itzel been right all along? All the creatures held their breath. But there was nothing there. The riverbed was dry. Heartbroken, Itzel realized the truth. She had given these creatures false hope. There was no giant snake and no water, and the seeds her Nana had planted would never grow. Itzel hadn't been able to save them. She sat down and started playing her flute. As tears ran down her cheeks, the creatures cried with her. Boom, crash, roar. From underneath them, a long shadow sprang into the sky. The river surrounding them started to fill up with water. Itzel and the ocelot held onto each other as a wave from the rising river lifted them up, carrying them downstream. Along the banks of the river, the other animals began their journey home. On the way down, they waved goodbye to the other creatures. The Kinkajou looked pleased as she cooked breakfast for her children. Thank you, said Diaguti, cheerfully watering her tree. With dirty paws, the opossum waved a thankful goodbye as he finished shaping the comal. Finally, Itzel and the ocelot were home. They joined their Nana in the hammock to watch the rain fall. Many, many years ago, although it might have been yesterday, the world was set right again by a little girl who had the courage to believe in the tales of old. Thank you so much for listening. There's a glossary here and there's a little author's note at the end of the book where I mention that this story is actually based on two traditional stories from my home country, El Salvador. One of them is this giant snake, and the legend is that the giant snake brings the water to water the crops. And the other legend is about the tonali. And the tonali is a creature that protects, it's a protective spirit. So every person in El Salvador has a protective spirit, like Itzel has the ocelot. And I also have several words. Maybe you don't know, maybe some of you have heard these words. So I mentioned, for example, atol, which is a sweet beverage made of white corn that you can drink hot. For example, also the comal, which is like a small plate made of clay. And the huacal, which is a vessel that is made of a fruit made with the fruit of the wakal tree. And yes, thank you so much once again for listening. And if you have any question, then
Let us know,
Nick
guys,
can.
if you have questions about the
Yeah,
book, about being an
exactly.
author, about the Ocelot. If you wanted to unmute yourself and ask your question, we can do that, or you can type it in the chat if you don't want to talk and I can read it for you. Does anybody have anything they'd like to ask Rachel? Let's see. Who's going to be the first one to think of a question?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Why is the whole front page full of raindrops?
At the beginning of the book, you mean the illustrations?
Is that what you're talking about from the beginning of the book?
Yeah. At the beginning.
Mm-hmm. So we have different color raindrops at the beginning. I think I took a little bit of an artistic liberty to create the different colored raindrops. Just so they match the rest of the book.
Thank you.
Because yeah, thank you.
Who else has a question for Rachel? Rachel, have you written other children's books?
Yes, I have written a second book, but it's not, it's about a little girl who skateboards. I think you can see in the background behind me, there's a piñata. And that's the main character of my other book. It's a girl who skateboards. So.
Somebody asked in the chat, what made you want to become an author?
So I have always loved telling stories. I've also always loved to, well, first of all, to listen to the stories my grandmother told me when I was growing up. And then I noticed that I also loved telling stories. And I always really loved writing. When I was in school, I would love all the creative writing exercises we had. And I think I was maybe around 10 when I decided that I wanted to be an author. It took a little time, but I'm finally here.
You can put your heart, set your heart and your mind to it, and you get there.
Totally.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Where did you get your other books?
How did you think of How did you think of
the Ocelot?
Of the Ocelot? Oh, that's a nice question. So I chose the Ocelot because it's an animal that lives in El Salvador, but it's actually an endangered species in El Salvador. And I thought for a very, very long time that ocelot didn't exist in El Salvador anymore until I saw one myself. So I decided it would be a very nice opportunity to write a book about endangered species in my home country that starred one of my favorite animals, which are cats. So that's why.
Where can you get the other books?
The other books, you can buy them online. So it's the other book is called Skater's Yellow, and it was published by Scholastic. And that book you can get online on Amazon, I think other bookstores also.
Okay.
Thanks.
Someone asked how. Oh,
Yeah. So I've been an author since last year. But I before this I published actually published a research paper for my university. So, but I think that doesn't count. I just the books that are for fun, those are the ones that count. And I've been one since last year where I published both books, Itzel and Cielo. Yes, probably at the public library. I think that's a very good idea. I think both books are there, definitely. And first I'm going to, yeah, so Molly and Maddie, yes, the other animals are also endangered species. I think the one that is not particularly endangered is the agouti, which you can commonly find. Some people even have them in their backyards. So you can find those more frequently, but the kinkajou, for example, I think that one is particularly endangered as well, just like the ocelot. And yes, to that question, I actually was a Girl Scout for a very, very short while. I think I was a Girl Scout for just one summer until I had a little accident. and that's it. Yeah. So that was my only summer being a scout, but I really loved it. It was very nice. I really liked the uniform actually. And it was very fun. It was a very lovely experience. And sadly, no, I don't have any plushies for the book. But I think a plushie of the Ocelot would be definitely a very cute thing to have.
We had some as one of the reward offers for the fall program. So
Oh, really?
We do have a stuffed ocelot.
Oh, nice. That's so cute. That is so lovely. I have a real life ocelot, but it's cat sized. And he's actually currently playing with a book.
He's so smart he can read.
Yeah.
Thanks for those great questions, girls. Anybody else? Everybody's feeling quiet tonight. This is cold here. All right, well, I think we've reached our end of questions. If anybody ever thinks of anything else, you can email me and I can always reach out to Rachel for you.
Yes, definitely.
I hope everybody had a great time. Thank you so much, Rachel. That was awesome to have you reading your book for us.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Welcome. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.